We see Galnova struggling against a monster, wondering why he can't use his flames, and he orders Marlphus to heal him. But she explains that she's already using her spell, and it's much weaker than usual. He orders their mage to use fire magic, but he reveals that he can't, so they start arguing, and Bandana thinks their party is doomed.
Hey anime lovers, welcome back to Anime Snap Recap, where every epic story gets snappy and exciting. So buckle up and hit that like button if you're ready to relive the hype. And don't forget to subscribe for your weekly dose, which drops every 2 days of anime recap bombs. Let's snap into it. The story opens with villagers hiding inside their houses as a terrifying S-Rank monster is wreaking havoc on their village. It's revealed that they used all of their money to hire a powerful group called Dragon's Fang. We then meet a boy named Kurt who lacks any combat talent, so his only job within the party is to handle chores. While waiting for the group to slay the monster, it suddenly appears behind him and sends him flying with a strong blow. Their ranger, Bandana, uses her rope to tie it down, but the monster easily flings her into a wall. The healer, Maris, quickly heals her, and she manages to entangle the monster again. That gives their leader, Galnova, an opening to strike it down with his flaming sword. With the monster defeated, the villagers rejoice, and the Dragon's Fang party gains recognition as heroes. Later, we see Galnova eating a meal with the group, but he starts complaining about the food the villagers gave them. He then orders Kurt to prepare something better. Bandana reminds him that it's Kurt's last day, and Galnova finally admits they're letting him go because he's not helpful in combat. Maris adds that a proper party can only have 4 members and believes their strength will improve if they replace Kurt with a mage. So they've decided to remove him. Kurt pleads to stay, but Galnova tells him he's useless and kicks him out. Now traveling alone, Kurt soon realizes he's nearly out of funds. He goes to a local workstation where he meets a clerk named Kersel and tells her he's looking for employment. During the interview, he explains that he was recently kicked out of a hero party. Kersel assures him not to worry, suggesting that his experience might still help him land something decent. She then tells him it's time to take an aptitude test, which measures natural God-given talents. She hopes it'll reveal some hidden ability. Kurt is excited, but ends up receiving the lowest possible score in every combat category. Kersel informs him that it'll be difficult for him to find work based on these results. However, she clarifies that they haven't tested his non-combat aptitudes yet because the technician is away. Kurt says he barely has money to survive, so Kersel decides to try something different. She hands him a sandbag and asks him to lift it. As he tries, he notices it's draining his mana. Despite struggling, she concludes that he's strong enough for physical labor and asks if he'd be willing to help repair the walls of a frontier town. Kurt agrees, and she writes a letter of introduction for him. Upon arriving, the foreman reads the letter and doubts that Kurt is fit for construction work. Still, he's desperate for help, so he lets Kurt prove himself. He tells him to start repairing the wall and promises to return in 3 hours, noting that Kurt's pay will depend on how well he performs. When he returns, he's shocked to see that a large section of the wall has already been repaired. Thinking he may have done something wrong, Kurt apologizes for the mess and mentions that he ran out of cement. The foreman is confused, especially about how Kurt worked so high up without any scaffolding. Kurt shows him his method, and though the foreman finds it absurd, he realizes Kurt is telling the truth. The foreman hands Kurt a bag of coins, telling him that's all he can afford to pay at the moment, but promises the rest will be transferred through the workstation. Kurt feels he's been paid more than he deserves and is thrilled to return the next day. After just 2 more days, the west and north walls are completely finished. The workers are amazed, but the foreman tells Kurt not to come back. He explains that Kurt works way too fast and might take away the jobs of the other workers. He believes Kurt's aptitude in construction must be triple S rank and advises him to head to the capital for better opportunities. He gives Kurt the remainder of his salary and says goodbye, though Kurt feels the foreman may dislike him. Kurt returns to the workstation and tells Kersel that he got fired again. At that moment, they notice a girl named Ulyssia arguing with another clerk, who's refusing to post her job request. Kersel asks what's going on, and the clerk explains that Ulyssia wants to hire a miner, but insists on only paying them if the mining job succeeds. Kersel advises her to find investors to develop the mine, but Ulyssia says the mountain will be seized if she doesn't pay taxes within the week. Kurt volunteers, saying he used to help out in mines before. Kersel warns him there's no guarantee he'll be paid. Ulyssia says she wants to hire a dwarf instead because Kurt looks like a kid. Kersel responds that hiring a dwarf will cost her 10 silver coins, and Ulyssia realizes she doesn't have enough money. So she reluctantly agrees to hire Kurt. As they leave, Kersel tells her co-worker that Kurt has a great personality and thinks he'd be popular with women because of his looks. Just then, the other clerk informs her that they received a bank transfer for Kurt. She's stunned to learn that his pay for the construction job amounted to 200 gold coins. Surprised, she accidentally trips over the sandbag and wonders why it's still lying around. Her co-worker casually mentions that they'll return it soon. She explains that the bag measures mana and becomes heavier depending on a person's mana capacity, but it stays the same for normal people. Kersel realizes it wasn't too heavy for her and remembers how Kurt struggled with it, so she suspects he might have a hidden ability. Kurt follows Ulyssia back to her camp, but notices there's only one tent. She says it's big enough for both of them, but he says it's inappropriate since she's a cute girl. She blushes at his words and asks if he's serious. He tells her he's been all over the world, but never met anyone as pretty as her. She doesn't believe him and says it's time to eat. He's happy she cooked for him, telling her it's been ages since someone made him food. Later that night, as they sleep in the tent, he sees that Ulyssia isn't wearing anything, so he panics and decides to sleep outside. We find out she was just testing him to see if he could be trusted and realizes he's a good person. The next morning, she sees him asleep outside and notices her dress has been repaired. He says he fixed it overnight, and she's shocked by his skill. She says they need 10 gold before the week ends and admits she doesn't know where to dig. He tells her to follow him and cracks open a rock, revealing a crystal worth 3 gold. He continues exploring the area, and after some time, he shows her all the gems he's collected. She wants to sell them right away, but he suggests turning them into magic crystals first. She tells him there are fewer than 10 magic craftsmen in the entire kingdom, but he makes one instantly. She's stunned, saying it usually takes an hour, and Kurt believes real craftsmen must be incredible if they can do it that long, since his mana runs out fast. Later, Kurt stays behind as Ulyssia heads off to sell the crystals. A guard stops her, asking if she has documents, thinking the crystals were imported, but she says they were made locally. When he demands to know who made them, she shows him the royal crest. He apologizes once he sees it, assuming she works for the king. She uses a teleportation stone to reach the capital, and we learn she's no longer with the royal family, but she knows the guard wouldn't believe that. Ulyssia visits Mimiko and asks her to buy the crystals. Mimiko inspects one and says it's worth 10 gold because it has 10 times the normal mana. Ulyssia is shocked, especially since she has 50 of them. Mimiko buys them for 500 gold, but asks her not to sell them elsewhere, saying it could create chaos. She tries to find out who made them, but Ulyssia won't say. Mimiko tries to pull rank, but Ulyssia reminds her she's no longer part of the royal family. Mimiko backs off, but warns her not to let the crystals go to other nations and offers to make their creator a noble. Ulyssia then visits Kersel and asks about Kurt, but Kersel says she must protect her client's privacy. When Ulyssia shows her the royal crest, Kersel shares his records and is shocked he earned 200 gold for one job. Kersel explains he was fired for working too fast. Ulyssia deposits 499 gold in Kurt's account, asking her to keep it quiet. When Ulyssia returns to camp, she finds a cabin, and Kurt says he built it while she was gone. She's amazed he built it in one night, but he thinks it's normal since his village did that often. Meanwhile, Golova struggles with a monster. His flames won't work, and when he asks Maris to heal him, she says her spell is weak. Their mage says he can't use fire magic, and the group starts to argue. Bandana believes they're finished. Back at camp, Ulyssia shares Mimiko's offer, but Kurt declines, saying he doesn't want power over others. He asks if she paid the tax, and she reveals she took just 1 gold and gave the rest to him. He promises to work hard, and she asks about his sleep. He says he got 6 hours, which she finds hard to believe after all the work. He feels guilty since he only used to sleep 4 hours with the hero's party. He finds a great spot and tells her she'll find ore there, then goes to dig elsewhere. She's thrilled to find topaz and wants to ask Kurt to make it a magic crystal, but doesn't want to use him. She checks on him and sees he's dug a huge tunnel filled with glowing moss. He suddenly calls out to her and says all he found were worthless stones. He puts them into a box, but she notices they look valuable. He tells her they're called Myathil and says his village discards them because they're considered useless. However, she knows they're actually worth more than gold or platinum due to how rare they are. She asks what kind of ore he was searching for, and he reveals it's orichalcum. She instantly recognizes it as the legendary metal of the gods and assumes it can't be found in this mountain. But he explains that it's actually common, usually located 7 kilometers below the surface. She's stunned he dug that deep in just 8 hours and even filled the tunnel afterward for safety. She finds it absurd until she sees light in the distance and realizes he tunneled through the whole mountain. After 2 days of mining, they go back to town and find that the tunnel connects their city to Lord Tehon's territory. Ulyssia lets merchants pass through for a fee and uses the income to cover her taxes. While exploring the city, Kurt meets Bandana and asks if she's still with Galva, but she says she left. We find out Galva caused a scene at a restaurant, refused to pay, and got reported. Bandana mentions she arranged Kurt's meal there and asks how it was. He replies that the food couldn't compare to his own cooking. She says they already ate all his leftovers and Galva wants him back, but she just steals his teleportation crystal and runs off. She sees guards searching for him and thinks he'll be arrested. We also learn Marphus was summoned by the church, and she believes their group is done for. She decides to keep it a secret and tells everyone she got fired, so Kurt stays uninvolved. Bandana then mentions an atelier meister who needs help and gives Kurt a map, urging him to believe in himself. He heads off to find the workshop. We learn that the atelier workshops create magical items for the public, and the head, known as the atelier meister, has unique rights over their development and sale. Kurt finds the place and knocks. Michelle, the assistant, answers the door. He says Bandana sent him, and she happily welcomes him, but he immediately notices a bad smell. Michelle admits she hasn't cleaned the kitchen in 3 weeks. She's called away by her master, leaving Kurt to clean. He finishes scrubbing the entire kitchen in 30 minutes, then goes to find her. He accidentally walks into a girl's room and sees she isn't clothed, which embarrasses him. He explains that he just started working there. She tells him the Meister is in the basement, but he notices a mark on her and realizes she's cursed. He observes how the curse has progressed and numbed her pain. He thinks she's not eating properly because of organ damage, but then hears her stomach growl and realizes she's still hungry. He decides to make her something to eat. Meanwhile, Ulyssia sells the Myathil and orichalcum that Kurt mined, and Mimico tells her they're worth 50,000 gold. Ulyssia is shocked that such materials exist in this world. She wonders what people will do if they discover Kurt's abilities. Mimico warns her that others might try to kill him, questioning how he managed to hide his power for so long. Ulyssia wants Kurt to become an atelier meister, thinking it will restrict his exposure, making him less noticeable. She also plans to serve as his bodyguard, though she knows Kurt doesn't fully understand how talented he really is. Back at the workshop, Kurt sees Michelle with Alia, the Meister. He apologizes for using the kitchen and explains he made a meal for the cursed girl. Alia realizes he met her and begs him not to tell anyone. She pays him and says his work is done for the day. Alia regrets letting an outsider see the girl, but she's trying to delay her curse. She brings the food to her and tries to test it for poison, but the girl stops her, saying she trusts Kurt. She tastes the food and says it's delicious, but suddenly begins feeling odd, so Aelia suspects it's poisoned. However, the girl assures her she's fine and explains that the food actually cured her. They realize the curse mark has vanished. Meanwhile, the man who placed the curse senses it has been lifted and is in disbelief. He offers to cast it again, but his master insists the girl must be eliminated as soon as possible. Aelia visits Mimico's shop and says they need to discuss something urgent. Mimico says they can trust Ulyssia, so Aelia introduces herself and shows them the girl, whom they recognize as the third princess, Lizette. Aelia reveals she had been cursed. They believe someone tried to assassinate Lisette because she's the king's only child with a princess from the Guramak Empire, a neighboring country to the east. As a symbol of unity between both nations, killing her would devastate that peace. Mimiko is relieved she's safe and vows to help identify who cursed her. But she's curious how such a powerful curse was broken. Lisetta says Kurt saved her, and both Mimiko and Ulysia are shocked. Mimiko starts listing suspects, naming General Seneva first, followed by Bishop Tristan, and lastly Lisette's stepmother Dora. Lisetta suspects Dora tampered with the anti-curse wards in the royal palace to allow the assassin's curse through. But Ilia and Ulysia believe the other suspects had equal access. Ilia explains that Lisette just turned 15 and must leave the palace to begin a year of training. She suggests forming a new atelier workshop where Lisette can train. They realize the enemy will investigate the Meister overseeing the atelier, so they want someone unknown to the public but competent. Ulysia shows them a crystal Kurt made, and Alia is stunned by its exceptional quality. Meanwhile, Kurt returns to the workshop, but Michelle tells him it's closed since Ilia left the day before. He assumes he must have messed up again. Later, he eats at a restaurant and overhears some adventurers discussing their quest. He realizes they're stuck because they lack a porter, so he offers to join, admitting he's weak in battle but can carry their gear. One of them doubts he'll survive the job, but her brother hits her and apologizes for her rudeness. He warns Kurt that the job will be tough because they're hunting iron golems weighing over 200 kilograms. Kurt says he's up for it and offers to prove it by lifting them. He picks up their leader with ease, surprising everyone. Then he lifts their warrior too, who weighs over 150 kilograms, and they're all impressed by his strength. Kurt starts working with their party, and the warrior introduces himself as Kez, revealing that although he carries a sword, he prefers fistfighting. Their leader is named Danzo, who identifies as a samurai, and their ranger tells Kurt to call her Sina. The team is called Sakura. Kez explains that their previous porter got sick and was told by a doctor to rest for a week. Kurt thanks them for accepting him, and they laugh and tell him they're counting on him. As they prepare to enter a cave, Kurt gets caught by a slime. Sina tells him to destroy its core, but he can't stab through its body and ends up hurting himself. She kills it for him, calling him the worst fighter she's ever met, but the group reassures him they'll handle the combat. Kurt realizes they're nothing like the hero's party. These people don't look down on him. Sina spreads glowing moss to light the cave, and they spot goblin droppings. She points out it's fresh, meaning goblins are nearby. Kez tells Kurt not to worry, since goblins are weak, and says they'll retreat if they're overwhelmed. As they move through a narrow passage, a goblin appears and alerts others. Danzo slashes it down, but they soon find goblins charging from both ends and are forced to fight their way out. Kurt discovers a hidden tunnel, and Sina says they need to find an exit, but she suddenly shuts the door. He reminds her that Danzo and Kez are still outside, but Kez tells him there's no way to escape the goblins, so they'll hold them off while Kurt finds a way out. Kurt wants to fight beside them, but Sina says he'll just slow them down since he couldn't even beat a slime. He realizes that she also wants to fight but doesn't want their sacrifice to go to waste, and Kez tells Kurt to protect her. Kez says he has no regrets and considers it an honor to die protecting his sister. Danzo agrees, saying he's ready to give his life for his friends. Sina tells Kurt not to worry and says she believes they'll make it out alive. She spreads luminous moss to brighten the area, but is shocked to see an iron dragon golem blocking their escape. Meanwhile, Ulysia guides Lette to the inn where Kurt is staying, but tells her to hide her identity, so Lette pretends she's just a regular girl. They go to his room, but he's not there. Bandana tells them where he went, but she vanishes before Ulysia can ask questions. Ulysia suspects a trap, but knows the cave is crawling with goblins, so she tells Lette to stay behind while she checks. However, Lette insists on coming, saying she can defend herself with magic. They reach the cave, and Lette follows Kurt's footprints, but they suddenly disappear. She uses magic to heighten her senses. Ulysia assumes she'll use enhanced hearing, but Lette starts sniffing the walls and eventually locates him by scent. Ulysia is stunned since that ability usually requires physical contact. They hear fighting, and Ulysia tells Lette to stay put. Lette casts a buff to enhance her abilities. Kez and Danzo struggle against the goblins, but are surprised when Ulyssia appears and starts cutting them down. Back in the cave, Sina begins to lose hope, thinking they won't make it. She tells Kurt the golem will attack if they try to flee and cries, believing Kez and Danzo sacrificed themselves for nothing. Kurt assures her he'll take care of it. She doubts him, but he dodges the golem's strikes and hits its weak spots, making it collapse. She's shocked he beat it, but Kurt says he's experienced in breaking down iron golems. Ulyssia bursts in, stunned, and Sina tells her Kurt mined the golem. Overjoyed to see her, he asks her to help the others. Ulyssia says they're alive but injured, and their lives aren't in danger. She recalls hearing about a legend of a man with no fighting skill, but an S rank in mining who defeated a briar dragon with just a sickle. She thought it was a myth until now. Let tells Kurt he's incredible. Kez and Danzo explain to Ulyssia how they survived and thank her for saving them. Ulyssia says they need to talk before returning and reveals they'll start a new atelier with her as the head adventurer. She invites Kurt to join, but he says he's still with Sakura. They tell him not to worry about them and to take the opportunity. Ulyssia mentions the atelier will need staff and asks if they want to work there too. They agree. She suggests Kurt get his aptitude tested when they get back, and he's eager to see the results. Later, Mimiko meets him at the workstation and introduces herself, saying she'll evaluate his skills. She'd seen his magic crystal and wanted to meet him. That evening, Kurt celebrates with Sakura while Mimiko and Ulyssia go over the results. Mimiko told Kurt his scores were mostly B and C, but in truth, he's triple S rank with more mana than her. Ulyssia thinks they should make him their master. Mimiko says it's lucky she tested him, or it would have caused chaos. But then they realize Kursal overheard them. She pretends she didn't hear, and that's where the episode ends. Let me know in the comments if you want more from this series. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Anime's Snap Recap